shift, which is a deliberate decision.
Right. Right. Yeah, well, why did that happen? I don't even know. We can talk about it live, but I don't even know. I never could figure that out exactly. Well, huh? I'll be darned. Huh? Right. Right. Right.
So, yeah, banned with the wrong name.
Good morning, everyone. This is Richard Taylor, Final Cut Pro Radio, and to my, I don't know what direction is on the screen, but I'm pointing to Iain Anderson. He is from a different time zone, a different world, actually, right? Australia?
Oh, yeah. It's friendly down here. Hello. Yes, it's 11:15 at night here, so I'm having a cup of tea.
There you go. I'm having a cup of coffee, of course. My usual. I'm going to get this out of the screen a little bit. There we go. Just out of the screen. I was chatting with Chris Fenwick one time, and I have a TLM 103, and he has a TLM 102, and he couldn't figure out how I got mine out of the picture, and I couldn't explain it to him. I just have a boom coming up at an angle. His was in the picture. It was kind of the same thing. I didn't know how to explain it to him, but I can just do it to it just out of frame. But it's still.
This is just out of frame.
There you go.
Here.
There you go. And what kind of mic is that?
That's a Rode NTG3.
Okay.
Which can give you the trailer voice if you go close enough to it.
There you go.
Yes.
And this is a Neumann TLM 103 that I've had for a few years. I got it for recording vocals, and then I started using it for streaming live. I said, why not? Why shouldn't I use the best mic that I have? I have 30, 40 microphones because of my recording studio. Most of them SM58s, 57s, but I have some RE20s and some Sennheisers. I got all kind of mics. What is this? A Sennheiser MD421. So, but this is my favorite for vocals, so I use this one.
Have you considered seeking professional help for your addiction?
Well, I have a recording studio. Have you ever mic'd a set of drums?
No.
I need a dozen mics just for the drums, the 20 mics sometimes, because it depends on how big drum kit is. But that's where I acquired them. And then I used to do, my band needed a PA system, so I ended up buying the PA system. And then when we weren't playing, I'd rent it out, do other bands, and I needed microphones. I haven't sold them because there's no reason to sell them at this point. I will at some point, but not right now. So, Final Cut Pro 10.4.9.
Yay!
I am very, very pleased with the update. I mean, for a point update, it's very big.
Yeah. I think Apple, in the Final Cut team, are proving that they don't need to go to a big point update, like a big number update like 10.5 to introduce lots of useful features, which do change the user interface.
Sure.
But still the major flow of the app is still the same. You bring stuff in the top left and you process it down below and you spit it out and mess with it with the inspector on the right. All that's still the same, but
So talk about the overlay feature. Just let's start with that.
Yeah.
I saw the Ripple video where they used it to position their text in a vertical video.
Oh,
right?
Okay. Yeah.
That's what they have. They have actually. Steve has a couple. You can download his. It's just a PNG with a slice in the middle and two black things on the side.
Sure.
But you don't really need that, though, do you? If you do a vertical video, you can just use you can actually position it. You can see what's outside the frame.
Okay, so there's a few things. With vertical and with regular, you're going to need to go and get an overlay which is the right shape, because if you use the wrong shape, it just fits to the screen.
Sure.
It doesn't stretch out.
Sure.
So it'll be the wrong size. What I use it for is and what I did in my videos, because I've got my own video on my YouTube channel, just a short one, and then a Mac Pro Video What's New course. So they're both live at the moment. Right. So what I'd recommend doing is, often people will, and it drives me a bit crazy, but people do this, is if they leave their mouse on a YouTube video, the playback stuff at the bottom will stay put. It'll stay visible. The playback bar, the play and the pause, and all that information.
Okay.
That's obscuring the video. There's also a little bit of stuff at the top left and right, but that's kind of in the safe, just outside the safe zones anyway. So you can kind of take that as read. But the more important thing is that if somebody's displaying captions, And remember, YouTube will auto caption things even if you don't explicitly provide captions. That takes up space as well. So all of that stuff combined almost kills off the lower third if it's an online video.
Okay.
So what I use the overlay for is, putting a virtual copy of the playback Chrome, all those playback controls, and some text where the captions are going to go. Just as a reminder that, hey, you might want to avoid this area because people might not be able to see it all the time. So look, that's one use for it. Other people might want to put like guidelines to show where they might crop for vertical later on.
Okay.
Though Smart Conform is going to take away the need to really prepare for that. That's the kind of stuff which you should really do on set by framing wider than you normally would. Excuse me.
That's okay.
So, I mean, if you're going to shoot and you're planning to crop for widescreen and for vertical, then what you want to do is shoot, ideally, if you've got a GH5, then shoot in anamorphic mode because it's 4:3 and 5,000 pixels across. And so you can do an awful lot of stuff with that.
I love that. I love that in the GH5.
Way more than enough pixels to do a really good vertical crop. And it's also enough to to zoom in just for your 4K one without actually still do 1:1 pixels if you want to do that. And that's because, you want to keep a common top above the head.
Okay.
Because that just simplifies the process. So if you plan everything out to have a common top line between the two aspect ratios, like if you look at this frame of me at the moment, I'll just shrink down. So if you imagine the vertical frame of me would look okay, but the horizontal frame would also need to be a common top line.
Right.
And if you imagine this was a fair bit wider, so if I zoom back, and imagine the edges of the screen don't exist, then you can imagine, because you're shooting in 4:3, so roughly the edges of the screen would be there. Then you can imagine just using the top half of the screen for a 16:9 cutoff, and then still use the whole frame for a vertical cutoff. And it means you don't feel too tight in either frame. So ideally, you won't need to be able to 100% get the crop right on set or while you're doing the 16:9 cut. And the recommended workflow that I do would be get the widescreen cut approved and then duplicate it and then use Smart Conform to then get the 16:9 approved, the 9:16 vertical version or square version or whatever approved. Because really, you don't want to be cutting the same thing twice in two different aspect ratios if you're going to have to go through a heap of approvals. You want to get one and do the other one. I mean, maybe some people might disagree and go another way. That's cool.
Well, there's a couple things about the vertical video. I was under the impression that it was going to follow a person on screen. Does Premieres do that?
I'm not sure. I don't know if it does.
When people were talking about artificial intelligence and stuff, I thought it was going to actually track and move the mask, move that 9:16 slice with them.
I don't think Premieres does, but I am not sure at all.
Okay.
I know the Final Cuts one is an average of where the person is in frame.
Right. So, and you can move it with the anchor point.
Yeah, you can move it. You could always, just like you've always been able to do it, you can
with keyframes.
So assuming you've got a widescreen frame and you want a widescreen shot in a vertical frame, then you'd be keyframing the X just to move it backwards and forwards. So if somebody's moving around the frame, then you can do that. I mean, yeah, there is CoreMelt has a plugin that does that specifically to reframe people like that.
Oh, it does?
Yeah, I think it's in Track X.
Okay.
Yeah, it's called, and this is terrible, I can't remember the name, but yes, it's one of those. I really should be able to remember the name. So I'll track that name down.
Okay.
And yeah, I've got it here. Yeah, Roger will kill me if I don't.
Yeah, exactly. Boy, I haven't heard from Roger for a while.
He's been working on stuff.
Yes, good. I was working with his transcription thing for a while.
Yeah.
I always get the name wrong, so I don't want to say it. You look it up. Scribe-O-Matic, there it is. I always say the wrong one. And working with that for a while, and I really like that.
Yeah, I've been using that quite a lot. There's a couple of clients who I do a lot of work for, and nearly everything I do has to be captioned. So, I use Scribe-O-Matic to get the first pass, and it's pretty accurate these days. So, everything will always need some level of editing, just because, there's jargon, which the auto transcription stuff, and I think even a human would get wrong.
Right.
And I like having the final say, just like I like having final say over the edits, and I don't mind going through and editing it. But, the rules are different for, TV level standards captioning, and I would be outsourcing TV level standards captioning. Sure. There are very specific rules on that.
So if you're going to do here, when I think about vertical video, I have never had to deliver any vertical video yet, but not my stuff, but things, if I work for another client, they could certainly say, keep in mind, we want a vertical version of it or a square version of it going forward. But if I was filming that would affect my framing when I was filming. If I knew in advance I had to have a vertical version and a square, I'd shoot everything much wider than I normally would, perhaps. Yeah. Or I'd be thinking of that while I was filming. But if I already filmed something, just regular 16:9, then I went back, it's different. So I know in advance, it's one thing. If I don't know in advance, it's a different.
Yeah. And you run the risk of having shot too tight, basically. If you framed it pretty tight for 16:9, then you are going to fill the frame with a face on vertical.
Right.
That's the major danger. Like this frame is good for widescreen, but too tight for vertical. This is a scary face filling a tiny frame. You need to frame wider.
Yeah.
If you're cropping that heavily. Vertical is not a fun ratio. I mean, square is not great either. Square is, we are going to waste space on every kind of screen that this is going to be shown.
Right.
Which is fine if the whole screen is not a video. Like it's actually a pretty good format for
if it's graphic.
When you can have text underneath it, for example. So I did a whole series of square videos showing people how to do like an exercise or a movement to recover after surgery or something. And square worked for that because yes, it's going to be on a phone. We don't know how they're going to hold their phone, probably vertically, but maybe not. And it's not a bad idea to have some text underneath that. So square fits that fine, but vertical, I get the idea that you want to not inconvenience the people who are scrolling, but it is a useless format for showing anything more than a single person standing on their own.
Well,
it's a selfish format. Yeah. It does not let a group of people have a conversation. It's for one person standing up. So
right. Well, I always use if you've ever seen the graphic for Reservoir Dogs, when there's people all across the entire frame, people standing, all across. How would you can't.
Well, no, you don't. And you do it a different way. And look, there are ways to do it. I'm sure there are. I'm quite sure I could come up with a good poster for Reservoir Dogs for a vertical version. Look, it's easy to poke fun. And the wider a movie was framed, the worse it's going to look when cropped for vertical.
Right.
And look, there are ways to do it, and I don't want to,
No, I understand. It's not really meant for, it's not, right. Yes, it's not really meant for pre-existing movies that were shot in. It's not meant for that. It's meant for, I understand the appeal, and most people just don't know they automatically film this way. They don't know that they can film this way as well.
I haven't seen the Damien Lachazelle short that Apple did recently, and I understand why they do that as well. And look, maybe it'll encourage people to stand even closer just so they can be in the frame with one another, and maybe that will encourage closeness on film. Of course, not during a pandemic, but
right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some of the other things. So you can now do social media in Final Cut Pro. You can crop whatever, you can do a custom ratio, you can do 9:16, you can do a square, and what you do is you make a separate project, a new project, right? And then you choose that ratio, and then you choose auto. Is it auto? What is it called? Auto, not is it conform?
Smart
okay.
Conform.
Smart Conform.
Yeah. Okay. So, it's the core melt thing is track and lock down. It's an effect that was with one of the products, by the way.
Okay.
So, yeah. So anyway, just so that Roger doesn't kill me, track and lock down.
Absolutely.
So the workflow for doing social media stuff in Final Cut is actually kind of similar to how it used to be, but now nicer. So it would be you would duplicate your project. Nowadays, you'd use duplicate project as, because that's now a one-step duplicate and change the project settings in the duplicate, which is great. And instead of just having to do custom to get to a non-widescreen frame, you've now got square and vertical presets as well as custom. So you can, if you want to do a 4:5 or something weird, like I've been doing ads for stadiums recently. Like I think Chris does a bit of this stuff as well.
Right.
It's literally 2000 by like 50.
Wow.
It's stupid. I can bring up the files. I'm kind of curious to see how. They're kind of very silly files, but it is nice to see that stuff. Here we are. This is one of them. Those you can do anything when you do custom. It's 1536 by 144.
Wow.
Actually, that might be the tall one. Yeah, that's the tall one. So that's the less wide of the two, and the super wide one is 2000 by 96. And so you do have to design for the aspect ratio you're given. And
well, that's true. That's true. If you know it in advance, yes, it makes a difference. And I absolutely think I will be doing a vertical video, at least a version of it going forward. I haven't yet. And when I film, I don't think in terms of it being on a vertical phone. So I don't think in those terms, but I might at some point. But I really like the tools in Final Cut. I really like the way they've implemented that.
Yeah. So to get back to the workflow, you duplicate project as, you pick the new aspect ratio you want to use, and you can just tick Smart Conform, and then it goes through, analyzes all the clips, figured out which would be the best area to look at. If there's a person in the shot, it's probably going to focus on that. There doesn't have to be a person in shot. It will pick something interesting in shot. And I did this in the both the videos I've done with example frames, and it actually, it did a good job. It picked the right bit. It wasn't just dead center of frame. It was, does that look nice? Oh, good. And look, all this, every time you do AI, and I've seen this happen with Adobe InDesign, which has a similar feature, had a couple of years ago before, and it probably, maybe the Premiere team, took some of that research because it's Adobe AI stuff. And, it looks at the content of the image to figure out what it should be cropping. So it's been doing a similar trick for a while, and sometimes it's good and sometimes it's not. It's just
right.
We're going to have to try this out on all kinds of different content, and sometimes it's going to be great and sometimes it's going to be not so great, and that's
right.
fine.
It depends on what's in the shot. I mean,
all these apps, none of them are going to be perfect. So
do you think like Apple is using face recognition to determine where to put that, or just an actual body or motion? I wonder what it's using.
I don't know, but there's all kinds of, I'm pretty sure it'd be on some AI models which it's built. So in fact, here's a fun thing I found the other day. You know that photos can scan through the content of your images, like it can on the phone, which it does automatically. So if you fire up your phone and look in photos and search for water, it will find all the water. You can search for food, it will find all the food. Now, it hasn't sent this to the cloud, it's done it on your device because Apple do actually care about privacy. Turns out Photos on the Mac does the same trick, right? Okay. Here's the fun part. You can make a new Photos library if you hold down Option when you launch Photos, right? Right. Also in preferences for Photos, you can decide to not actually copy files when you import them, but leave them in place, right? So it's an option in preferences to leave in place. And I wouldn't recommend doing that normally because it means you'll have photos all over the place.
Right.
That, won't be. And I think, I think there must be some exceptions to it, but it means that you can experiment with putting a heap of video in photos. And it'll figure out what's in the video if you leave it long enough.
Really?
Really.
Wow.
So you can search through and get auto-keyworded information from your videos just by putting it into the Photos app and letting it process for a while. Now, wouldn't it be nice to see something like that show up in a future version of Final Cut?
Sure, absolutely.
So you can search for a drink, and then you instantly have the sections in your videos which include somebody having a drink. Because the tech is already there and it's working today. So wouldn't that be nice? Now,
yes, it would.
I can't figure out a good way to get that information out of photos, because they don't even appear as keywords on the files. You have to actually figure out what to search, and then you can see the files which satisfy that search. But there's not a big list on each file of what it showed up. So that's the kind of thing I'd kind of like to see for everything it's found, but I don't know if that's feasible either.
So I was a little bit surprised when we saw WWDC. We saw this, social media cropping feature, the little bit of preview they did for Final Cut. I thought that was going to be Apple Silicon for some reason. And it came out in this version, and I said, wow, it's not Apple Silicon's not, it's not what it doesn't need Apple Silicon. So that was interesting.
Well, yeah, look, it remains to be seen. So Apple Silicon has a part of the chip, or the part of the SoC, dedicated to the neural engine. And the neural engine it's a black box, so Apple doesn't really describe what's in it, but it's a part of the chip which you can speak to using, a machine learning API. And it's very, very good at that. So an order of magnitude better than Intel chips are, for example.
Okay.
So by being able to do that so much faster, it may well enable things like that photos-based image content analysis to happen much faster, which would be great. And maybe they could adapt that back to Intel chips as well. It really remains to be seen how much focus will be given to specific features running so much better on Apple Silicon Macs. Would Apple want to do that? And I suspect they probably will within at least a year or so. So like if we assume that Apple Silicon Macs will be the lower end Macs first, just to give Apple Silicon team a little bit more time to get even faster, more GPU power in Apple Silicon. B, if we assume, which it seems to be the case, that the first Apple Silicon Macs will be like a low-end MacBook, where lightness and battery power are
that's what I figured too, the low-end stuff.
And quite possibly the 21-inch iMac, since it didn't really get an update in the latest batch. That one doesn't have a GPU, so they could actually...
Oh, it doesn't?
No, it's got an Intel.
I didn't know that. Oh.
Apple's GPU can... Actually, am I wrong? It certainly didn't used to have one.
We got a comment. We got a comment from our mutual friend Alex Gallner. He says, "Ian, will that video search feature be in your new book?" We're going to talk about Ian's new book shortly, for sure.
I don't think it will be in my new book because I can't make it work properly yet, Alex. But I'm glad the feature exists. I hope it's a pointer to more stuff coming soon. Let me just see if the 21-inch iMac actually has.
How many people? I've been collecting bug reports on 1049 when I see them on social media, because a lot of times I'll look at it and say, where did I see that? Where did I see that? Now I'm taking screen grabs and saving them. And I don't know how many people say, how do I go back to version 10.4.8? And I just give them the Apple article that says, before updating, back up your Final Cut Pro application, back up your libraries. It gives you a warning before you update the library to make a copy of the library, which is another reason to use external media, because you don't have to worry about duplicating your media. You just duplicate the actual library file.
I'm not that worried. See, to be honest, I've very rarely want to go back, but partly that's because, I don't use any plugins for media. So if I was using Canon Raw Light or, anything that needs a plugin, that's when you've got to be really nervous because the plugin may not be updated. You may not be able to use media. That's bad. But the media is always there. Like if you had to go back to a backup whenever you upgrade, so if you upgrade Final Cut and it's a version which requires a library upgrade, which most of the recent ones have, during the upgrade process, it made a backup. And sure, that's a media-free backup in the backups folder, but your media is not gone anywhere. If it's internal, it's sitting in your library. You can
Is it still doing that with 10.4.9 still?
Yeah, every time it upgrades, it definitely takes a backup.
Okay.
And just to recap, the 21-inch iMac, the entry-level one has Intel graphics, but you can on the upper ones get it with a proper GPU, even configurable up to a Vega 20, which is who knows? Maybe they will introduce that one first. Hey, look, I'd be tempted. I got a 27-inch iMac. If they go to 24 and the GPU power is good enough.
Yeah. Now, listen, I had an iMac for years. I never got the trash can Mac Pro. I didn't have any use for it. I like the iMac better. So I've been doing iMacs. But it only has 2 Thunderbolt 3 ports. Even now.
That's bugging you, right? That is really bugging me.
It bugged the heck out of me. Listen, Ian, I have 8.
I've got a 4K screen.
I have 8.
You've got 8. That's
on
lovely.
my Mac Pro, really and they're almost all filled. I mean, I've
got 2 permanently filled. I've got one with 2 RAIDs coming off it, 2 my old Thunderbolts, Thunderbolt 2 and Thunderbolt 1 RAIDs, which daisy chain off one another, and the other one drives my 4K screen, and I'm done. Which means that I have no spare ports for maximum speed SSD, which I would dearly love to stick even a 1 terabyte. I have 1 gigabyte a second drive, but you can't get 1 gigabyte a second off an old school USB port. You can only get half of that or so.
Right.
So.
When I had my iMac until last December, I actually got a LaCie Thunderbolt 3 SSD that has a pass-through Thunderbolt port. And it's powered. So I got that specifically so I'd have a Thunderbolt port in front of the iMac that I could switch things in and out of. That's the only reason I got that drive, because it's powered, and I could switch things in and out because I was switching in and out instead of trying to reach in behind and plugging and unplugging and figuring it out. But anyway, I could never figure that out. I could never figure out why the MacBook Pro only had a 720p camera until the last one. The only Mac that had a 1080p was the iMac Pro. I don't know. I think the new ones have 1080ps, but that was something else I couldn't figure out. But let's get back to Final Cut Pro 10.4.9. So we talked about the social media aspect. The Save Project As is absolutely brilliant. I really love that command now. And an issue I had, I shot a project anamorphically on my iPhone with the Moment lenses. I love that. I love the anamorphic version. So I shot a project, and I was experimenting with the new proxies, H.264s. So I did all the proxies of the project, and I was going to make a proxy-only library. And then I forgot what size I made the proxies. I couldn't remember if I made them 100% or made them 50%. I couldn't remember. I said, well, I'll just go to the inspector. Look there.
It's not going to tell you, Richard. It's going to tell you the size of the full media.
Right. But now that we know, before, when we had just ProRes proxies, they were all 50%. Now we have 4 different proxies resolution size options. We have 12.5, 25, 50, and 100. So if I don't know what size I made them like I did this morning, well, can't they put a little something in the inspector or the browser, just say original size or proxy? Not original size, but proxy size. They know it. It has to know it. The Finder does.
You can just reveal the proxy file and open it in QuickTime Player and find out that way. So if you really
That's what I did. That's what I did.
Yeah.
Because Final Cut was saying it was 100%, and I said, did I make that 100% or did I make it? I thought I made it 50%.
See,
So then I
thought the old proxy rules were, and it's going to be really hard to verify this now, but I thought that if it was 1080p or lower, it was 100% of size, and if it was 4K
that's true.
or higher, it was 50% of size.
That's true.
Which is not a bad workflow. It's basically, I think it's the equivalent of the up to 1080p option now. That's roughly what it would be doing. Yeah, so look, I'd say that's a fair enhancement request, and you should definitely submit that enhancement request.
Just somewhere. It doesn't have to be, I understand somebody said it's for conforming and stuff. I understand that. But just somewhere. I mean, a little checkbox in the inspector says this is actually, or even on the inspector, when it says the full size, next to it says 12.5% or 25% or 50%, something like that. Just so, because I was trying to compare the quality of the original GH5 anamorphic files and the proxy files, and I had forgotten what it was. 100%. It looks pretty good. Is that 100%, 50%? I didn't know. I had to leave Final Cut to find out. But I think that's something they just forgot because they didn't need it prior. They didn't have 4 different versions of Proxy Resolution. So, no big deal. They can just do it overnight. They can just put it in there, and all you have to do is just draw a little checkbox in the inspector, right, and put some text beside it. That's all you have to do.
And look, it's going to make a big difference to collaboration workflows, because there's a big feature which is in the video. So if everyone's watched the videos, then from anyone, I think they'll have seen this one. But it's in the file menu, and if you select a library or an event or a project, it'll do something slightly different. But it's copy to library. So if you select a whole library, it's just copy to library. Otherwise, copy event to library or copy project to library. And now you can say, well, give me no media at all. Like they've already got the media. We've shared the media ourselves. Or you can say, oh, we'll just send them the proxy media. And so this is the best thing for sharing a library. It's
yes,
automated.
Absolutely.
Transfer library processes.
Absolutely.
So, for example, there's people here in Brisbane who, they're saying, oh, look, would you be able to help me edit this thing? And I was like, well, yeah, the internet's not great, and so I'd have to come over to pick up the media at first, and now it's like, well, no, I don't need to do that. If I need to edit this stuff, then I'll just give you instructions on what to do, and I'll just be able to write a script. It's going to be, okay, so make a new library and import all your stuff, select it all and make proxies at quarter size H.264. Now make a new library and only send the proxies. Right, zip that and send me it, and I'll send you back a project. I'll send you back a project, which will relink to your full size media, which will be your finished edit. That's just
right. No, it's
the fact you can explain that you don't have to really do much to someone who maybe doesn't know Final Cut super well. They'll now be able to participate in a collaboration workflow, and that's excellent. That's
so great. I have a question. It's funny because I was going to ask you this, and then Alex Gullner had a comment. Reading my mind, if there's a bug fix for 10.4.9, is it going to be 10.4.10 or 10.4.9b, or because it'll be 10.4.10? That's
we got to macOS 10.14.
Right. That's exactly what Alex says. Yeah. Proxy media size, an idea for 10.4.10. Because I'm seeing a little too many bugs. They might be third-party plugin related, but I'm seeing too many reports of bugs that people are complaining about. Maybe I don't think it's more than normal. So I'm thinking they're not going to put out 10.5 just to quash the bugs. They're going to put out 10.4.10.
Yeah, Apple's not afraid to go the double digits on a third point on a version number. I think that's fine. We're kind of used to it these days.
Right.
We'll be right.
That was one of the questions I was going to ask you. So let me see. So let's talk about some of the other features. So the proxy is probably the biggest one, would you say, the way they do proxies now?
Yep. No, new proxy functionality is the feature that's going to satisfy the most number of people who've been, wanting it to do stuff. It's, people who have had requests about, well, we could really do with this. This is a big deal because it enables not just average people to be able to get friends from other editors.
Right.
without much effort. It also enables all kinds of fancy workflows for professionals as well. So people who want to use a third-party app to generate proxies and have burned-in time codes and, have already generated proxies as part of their standard workflow, well, now you can just relink to those proxies. Just keep the file names the same, keep the durations the same, keep the same number of audio channels, and that's going to be okay. So all that's winner. That's really good. The one that makes a number of people happy just from a user interface point of view is the crossfades.
Oh, please. I mean, how many times I just did a half-hour documentary of just recently for local television, and every clip I got to expand it and crossfade. So. Yeah, thank God, finally. And they do a fine job. They just do exactly what you want to do. They take the two clips, overlap them, and then just crossfade them. And they have the availability of how much you crossfade in preferences. Yeah. Check that first. It's only 1/10 of a second right now, which is, for most part, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the kind of effect you're looking for. If you want a slightly more obvious fade, you might go for half a second. But if you're just trying to knock off the edge to kill, get the audio down to a zero crossing, then you'd go to 0.1. I found a very, very minor bug about that, actually. Just if you look in the shortcuts under the command editor, there is no default shortcut listed under Option T. But it clearly works, and it's in the menu. So I don't know why it's not showing up. Yeah.
So speaking of zero crossings, why doesn't Final Cut have zero crossings for audio? Take the Logic team out for lunch, buy them something, buy them a coffee or something. Say, can we borrow that zero crossing thing?
Continents? I thought the Logic team was based in Germany.
Yeah, they were for a while. I'm not sure if they still are or not. I don't know. Okay. But I would make a joke about that. Can you borrow this from those guys? But that's zero crossing seems like. But anyway, this is really cool. The audio crossfades for so long. It's just everything I do, I have to go back. Because I'm an audio guy, maybe like yourself, and I got to go back and make sure there's no little clicks or little thing at the end, and I got to fade them down now. Now, can you select a whole project and do them all at once? I don't know.
I think so.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
Here we go.
I know it does too.
If you're doing dodgy training media, like I'm just looking at one of these book timelines, it says there is not, I've just selected, 30, 40 clips. There is not enough extra media beyond clip edges to create the crossfade. So
because if only one of them is not, that's probably going to stop you.
But that's a classic thing, which if you're making training manuals, then you're just going to chuck the media on. Everyone in a training class is like, whole clip. But in the real world, you usually don't use the very, very starter end of a clip. So it'll be fine.
So Alex Gollner says, zero crossing, ask the Soundtrack Pro team if you can find them. We're still waiting for Soundtrack Pro 10 or X, right?
Soundtrack Pro. So many old fun apps that...
I never liked the horizontal sliders. I hate those for audio. I like vertical sliders, maybe because I'm used to a mixing board. But I never liked that in Soundtrack Pro, the horizontal sliders. So when we get a mixing board in Final Cut Pro 10, I'm sure it's coming in 10.5 or whatever. It's got to be coming. Hopefully they have vertical, whatever they call them. Roll sliders.
Look, wouldn't it be nice if you could use like one of these?
Does that? I can't quite see it. You're out of focus a little bit.
Let's unplug it. So this is
there you go. Oh yeah, there you go. Vertical sliders. Physical. That would be fantastic.
I use this for color correction with Command Post. Yes. I'm quite sure if they do ever introduce an audio mixer, then they'll have to put in support for hardware audio mixers, or Chris Hocking will add hardware support for an audio mixer.
Exactly.
So maybe we'll see.
So the proxies are the biggest thing, but there's so many little things. Like you just mentioned the. We have the Save Project As, which is new. Mm-hmm. Save project ads was the new. And
they've renamed duplicate as snapshot to just snapshot as.
Okay.
Or is it just snapshot? So there's a few little minor things like that. Snapshot project. There's ProRes RAW support if you've got, if you have the latest firmware, etc., and the camera supports it. Not very many cameras support color temperature adjustment. Most do exposure. Well, I think they all do exposure adjust. But yeah, look, if you're changing ISO and exposure adjust, then that's not desperately different from changing, just master brightness in master exposure.
Okay.
In the color board. The whole strength of ProRes RAW white balance or color temperature adjustment is that you can set an absolute value. So, I mean, if I've shot photography at an event, then one of the main reasons to shoot RAW is that if you've shot on the wrong color temperature, it doesn't matter at all.
Right.
Because you select that batch of photos and say, oh yeah, I screwed up the white balance on those. I shot at 5600, but it was 4000. So
sure.
Just go, and you've set it and they're fixed and there's no compromise. You've just done it. So the fact that you can do that now, but I think it's only on a Nikon Z6, Z7. Lee Herbert knows more about this than I do. So ask Lee next time you speak to him.
There you go.
And yeah, if you have one of those and an Atomos recorder, then you can now adjust that, which is very nice. So I mean, certainly if I was recording ProRes and wanting to use it, I'd be recording ProRes RAW if I at all could. I mean, yeah, why wouldn't you? It seems like a nice format for acquisition, and I am glad they've added that feature. Yeah, but you'll need to ask.
No,
Sony
people that shoot ProRes RAW have been asking for controls in the inspector for a while. So one of the other things, the little things, mixed media timeline, Proxy Preferred. I love that because all the time I've been saying, why can't, if I have 4K footage and 1080p regular footage, why can't I use the proxies from the 4K with the 1080p? Now you can. Yeah. Now you can. If people know what you're talking about, you can see proxy media and original media in the same timeline. Mm-hmm. You don't want to export that, but as far as working with it, it's true. So Alex, one more. Convenient. Alex Gollner says Final Cut itself doesn't know what a crossfade is. If Final Cut did, they would be selected or the durations change. Audio crossfades is more like a command that performs a useful script of actions to make an audio crossfade. Well, I don't know why Final Cut wouldn't know what it is. Well, because, listen, how often have you heard audio is at least 50% of video, good video, right?
I have not only heard that, I told people something very similar tonight, because earlier tonight, Richard, I was handing out awards at my local high school's short film festival.
Oh, you were?
Yes, they'd asked me to judge their short film festival this year, so I got to see all these films and pick the winners, which was great. It was really great to see the seniors and so here senior is grade 12, so it was year 11 and 12 students doing film at the local school, and they used Final Cut. Yay! Okay. So it was really good. And yes, but of course, if I'm handing out an award for best sound, then that's a perfect opportunity to tell people that sound is incredibly important. And look, the way I like to think of it is that a good movie does not have bad sound.
No, absolutely.
It can't have bad sound.
Even on YouTube,
prerequisite for
on YouTube, you got to have good sound. People will just turn you right off. I was a judge in a contest one time. I think it was for music, and I'll never forget this. Otis Blackwell was on the panel. He's the guy that wrote all the Elvis Presley songs. He was the guy that wrote like Return to Sender and a bunch of other things. And at one point I shook his hand and I said, I don't know if you're ever going to realize how important you are to the history of rock and roll. But that was a long time ago. But it was some kind of a judging contest. I was on the panel. So, yeah, Proxy Preferred is fantastic.
Yeah. No, that's a big improvement. That's that means that proxies no longer have to be an all or nothing thing.
Right.
So
right.
You can just proxy a few things, or you can have most of the media but not all of it. It means you can work with a few clips that you don't want to make proxies, or you just haven't had time to process proxies yet, and you'll live with them stuttering a bit or whatever.
Yeah.
It means you can actually, one person can have this media regular size, the other person has the other media regular size. They swap proxies, so they each have half the footage right and half the footage bad, and they can still get the job done. So yeah, look, it's smart.
Speaking of that, delete optimizer proxy files for individual clips.
Yeah, I have to say I'm not terribly excited by that one.
Well, if you had a problem with a proxy file, what didn't render properly, maybe an H.265 or something, you can redo it. You don't got to do all the ones. You don't got to search through the Finder and try to find something and delete it that way.
Yeah.
I'm going to skip right over the 360 video features unless you want to talk about those. I don't do 360 videos. Go ahead.
I did test it out and it works. It is a one-button hit though. So it's interesting because stabilization with video. Like if you have footage that's a little bit jiggly, then effectively when you stabilize it, it zooms it in. So and then compensates for your movements.
Right.
And you can't do that with 360 because you can't zoom anything in because that would ruin the back of the frame. So they just rotate the whole sphere around you to compensate instead. So it's always been a solvable problem. I'm glad they've solved it. But due to the nature of the way they've had to solve it, there are no controls. You turn it on, you analyze it, and then it's done. And you can turn it off.
Right.
You can turn it on. But it does work. So I don't think it's something that's going to really rock many professionals' worlds because the nature of most 360 video is that it's on a tripod.
Well, that's true. That's true.
But it's fantastic for casual users who have their 360 cameras. Hang on a second. Who have their 360 cameras on a stick and they're walking around and it tends to be a little bit shaky.
Now, what resolution is that one? What does it shoot?
5K, 5.2? I can't remember.
That's pretty good then.
No, it's good. Insta360 One X is a good camera. This is the good all-rounder. So yeah, if you don't mind shooting video that you appear in, and depending on context, that's totally fine. I mean, I think I used this at the Summit last year a bit.
Speaking of the Summit,
more stable.
Did you even go into the demo room last year, where they only had Mac Pros? You couldn't touch, you couldn't photograph. I looked in there like nobody was in there. It was like a desert.
No, there were people there. Maybe we're on the different groups, but yeah.
I mean, compared to prior years, it was like hundreds of people in there for hours and hours and hours. Last year, no pictures, no videos. Don't touch the Mac Pros. They weren't out yet.
Well, look, I think there are definitely factors which are out of the Final Cut teams.
I understand. I completely understand. So one of the other things, open and close projects in Final Cut Pro in the timeline. I wish they'd do that with libraries in the browser as well. You can click on one, close other libraries, or even a drop down on which ones you want to open and close, rather than in one at a time if you have a bunch of unopened. But I appreciate that we saw that little drop down. Somebody pointed it out at WWDC, little drop down error on the timeline, and that is very beneficial. So when you're in the Finder window, sometimes the Finder window has direct buttons to click on for icon view, list view, or whatever the third one is. Sometimes you have to use a drop-down arrow to get to those, right?
Yeah.
Which one do you find faster?
Sorry, in the Finder.
The Finder window, sometimes there's a little, I'm not sure if it's a save. They have the icon view, the list view, the other view. Sometimes there's a little arrow, the disclosure triangle to click on it, and then go down and choose it. I like the direct. Direct
in the
choose.
OpenSave dialogues. It's a menu with 3 items.
Right.
And yeah, no, I wish it was the buttons. I'm used to the buttons. I want the buttons everywhere.
Well, I'm just saying the direct contact, I like it better.
Yeah.
Rather than a drop down. Same thing with the timeline. I don't want a drop down menu to choose which timeline I'm going to. I want to see them directly on the top and just choose which one I want or close which ones I want. That's why I brought that up. Because every time I do that drop down, I said, oh, I got to do this drop down. Why can't I love it when they have just a direct icon, list, direct contact to choose which one you want?
Yeah, well, there is a, yeah, if you click and hold on the left and right arrows, which just take you backwards and forwards, you see a menu of all the other ones there.
No, I understand. Have you ever had a bunch of projects open and you go to the left side? Oh, it's on the other side. It's on the right side. And there's some kind of a mojo when you go back and forth, the projects aren't there anymore. I'm not sure what causes that, but that's what I'm saying. It's just weird. I don't go to the left. I go to the right. Is it the right? Is it the left? Because I copy and paste. Yeah. I copy and paste from projects. And then sometimes they're gone. The project's not there anymore. I have to reopen it. And I don't know what causes that. Do you?
No, I don't think I've had that experience. I think they're generally there. I tend not to juggle too many projects at once, so I guess this has never really been an issue for me. But look, I can see an argument for that little submenu, just having a list of all the different projects in it.
That would be fine. That would be better to me. It'd be better. So the other thing is we can sort clips and projects by last modified date now. So we have 3 different dates in the browser. Now, can we save a browser layout yet? Custom browser layout?
Let's find out. I thought that was something. Let's say no, because I don't think is that something that gets stored at your workspace?
Maybe.
So I'm not sure. I'm just looking at brand new preferences. So if I was to make a new workspace, save workspace as new test, and look at something else. So if I'm just doing this all live. So if I go to the organized workspace, bring that back. No, it just seems to be preferences which it sticks to. So if I go back to default now and then go into list view, because one thing I always do is hide the start and end. Because if you shoot on a GH5 and start at 0, they're meaningless. So
I don't do that either. I always use. I don't use I use date sometimes to sort by date. Now I can sort by last used, but I don't do start and end. Maybe some other things I do, but I wish I could save that. So we got a comment from Al Andrews. Hi, guys. Is Ian's new book covering the new updates too? Well, let's talk about that. Ian's got a new book out, Final Cut Pro 10 book.
I do. I have a new book, and yes, it is going to. It does already cover the whole book, the whole thing, the whole new release. So when the book comes out, which is, I think, going to happen around the end of September. Okay. So it's about 4 weeks away. And at the moment, it's in copy editing. So I've done, it's been written, it's been tech reviewed, it's now in copy editing, and there's obviously then layout has to happen as well. Sure. But no, all the images exist, all the text exists. It's it's over 130,000 words. Wow. So it's a bit of a monster. So anyone who really needs to sleep should just go read the color correction chapter, because it's very, very big. I'll open up the color correction chapter and just see. So yeah, the way I've structured the book is it's the way that an edit happens. So it's the 3 parts of the book. The first part is importing and organizing. Okay. The second part is rough cut to fine cut, so mostly editing. And then the third part is finishing and exporting. So there you go. So you can follow the whole book along with doing an edit if you want. Just go through chapter by chapter, and at the end you will have something to export. And obviously, as you do more exciting edits, more advanced edits, you'll just chop and change the order around, and maybe you'll import stuff late in the process, and maybe you'll do that aspect ratio change earlier on, and but for your first few edits, it's something you can just follow through. And I tried to make it best practice stuff, and I did a couple of things which I hope people like. So chapter 2 is not about Final Cut, it's about production tips. So when you're on set, these are the things you should be doing. You should be, labeling your SD cards, and this is the kind of shots you should be, the kind of shots you need to be capturing. You need more B-roll than you think you do. Just some basics, not everything that everyone's going to find useful, but I think everyone needs to know a little bit about everyone else's jobs, because it makes, if you've ever done shooting, you'll become a better editor. Like an editor who shoots becomes a better editor, a shooter who edits becomes a better shooter.
Sure, absolutely. And, so you're from Australia.
Indeed.
Where is B-RAW support? Blackmagic is also from Australia. Where is B-RAW support? That's what I got a question from Damon.
Oh, B-RAW support. Well, look, I've no idea. I have no special information. I think a lot of the engineering for Blackmagic's in Singapore anyway.
Oh, okay.
And but yeah, look, some people are saying that it could happen, but Blackmagic need to do it, or I'm not sure why. It depends who you ask and when you ask. And,
right.
I mean, if it is something that Apple have chosen not to do, then obviously they wouldn't talk about it. I've got no idea.
I don't think
Blackmagic shows
too many Blackmagic cameras to eliminate them from. I don't know the reason. I did ask the Blackmagic rep at last year's Final Cut Pro Creative Summit, and she said she didn't know herself. Or she wasn't telling me, one or the other.
And look, there's an obvious, I guess, political.
That's what I'm thinking. Something
issue in that each company would prefer that their RAW format gets the most support possible, but the outcome of that just ends up being that Premiere supports everything, and the others support their own.
But Final Cut has Red. Final Cut has RE RAW, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. No.
So there's no reason. I mean, there's no reason that. If it's political, they certainly have to resolve that.
Yeah, look, I certainly hope it's not. I don't know that it is. I think it's much more likely to be a technical issue.
Yeah, that would make more sense.
It would be very possible that, if this is something that Apple have to do, then maybe they've just found other priorities. I don't know.
Yeah, it'll be out in 10.5. It'll be there in 10.5 with the audio mixing roll thing that they're doing, whatever. Speaking of the Final Cut Pro Creative Summit, so at this point, it's obvious that there's not going to be a physical one this year because we would have had to have booked our hotels and our flights by now, right?
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be many physical gatherings this year.
Right. So if there is going to be a virtual Final Cut Pro Creative Summit, here's what I'm interested in. Is Apple going to do a presentation? That's what I'm interested in, because if they're going to do a presentation, they might be showing us something.
I don't know that. Let me have a look. So, if you have you seen the website recently, the FCPX Creative Summit website?
It's on the way.
So, FCPX 2020 is on the way. So they're going to do something.
Right. So it's going to be virtual. I mean, that's pretty obvious. But I'm curious. I mean, I understand all the presenters and stuff in the classes. But I'm curious if Apple is going to present, because that's what I'll be waiting for, because maybe they'll do something that show us something that hasn't been released yet, rather than show us 10.4.9.
I think, well, my suspicion would be that if Apple do present something, if it's a virtual one, then they wouldn't be able to make sure people observe NDAs. I think that would, because I don't think people would.
But we didn't have NDAs except for last year. The other 2 times we did, 3 times we didn't have NDAs. So I'm saying something. Well, you have to. I'm sure that. Yeah. So only last year was there, a restriction, and the other ones no. You can go ahead and film, you can go ahead and photograph, you can go ahead and social mediaize it, the whole 9 yards. So I'm thinking something along those lines. It's right about a good time, after Big Sur's been out probably. So.
Yeah, and that'll be interesting. That's my
guess.
Yes. Well, look, true. I really like Big Sur. I can't wait to shift across to it full time.
I like it too, except right now I can't use it because there's 3. Hedge for Mac doesn't work on it. Sound Source doesn't work on it. And what is that thing called? I forget what it's called. Little Snitch also doesn't work on it. 3 apps that I use all the time. There's a couple of other weird things. The apps that normally launch when you launch the OS are not there. I had to do them manually. Have you seen that? A couple of them, they don't launch, even though you check the preference to launch on, when you open it up. When Final Cut, when the OS comes up, these apps should automatically launch in the background. They're not doing it, even though the preference is checked for them to do it. So I do like it, though. I do like it. Final Cut seems really snappy on it so far. So.
Okay. Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to Big Sur. But, it means that when I finally do need to update my book for Big Sur, I'll have to retake a number of screenshots, anything involving menus. And, that's always one of those things which, as any producer of training material knows, you're dreading the interface changes.
Sure. Absolutely.
So, there's not too many interface changes in this latest release. But the icons in the bottom left corner of the viewer have been updated. You may not have noticed. They are all a little bit different.
Yes, I did. No, I did notice that. Yes.
Anyone who's taken a screenshot involving those 3 little icons has suddenly got to take a new screenshot. And also the font at the top left of the viewer that tells you the resolution and if it's stereo or surround, that has changed. So any screenshots of that are a bit of a giveaway. And
but the Final Cut icon hasn't changed yet. It's still the same. But other icons have in the dock.
They have, but not all of those stuck from the initial beta. So I guess we're going to have to wait and see.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not on the developer beta. I'm just on the public beta. I don't want to get too many bugs.
I think they're the same. So when a public beta comes out, the developer beta from the day before is the same thing. I'm a developer, so I usually wait because if I've got I don't usually have that many spare machines to dedicate to this stuff. So I'll wait until it's moderately safe, like when the public beta comes out, and then I'll go on the matching dev betas from that point.
So the other thing that I've been teasing all summer, first off, when I talked to the Final Cut Pro team on these things, I always tell them how great the application is, et cetera, et cetera. But I've been telling them the whole summer, I said, listen, if you don't have 10.5 or whatever you're going to call it ready, give us what you have for Intel right now. There's no reason to wait. Of course you have a version. Everybody knows you have a version. Give us that. But I kept also saying, I can't imagine they'd put it out in August because that's like the worst month of the year to do a major software update. And of course, they put it out in August.
Well, apparently this version works fine on Apple Silicon Macs. So, maybe now that the Final Cut team has had to do all of this stuff to support Metal and now Apple Silicon, now they can go back to doing front end changes and do some bigger, more obvious user facing things. And I have to rewrite large chunks of the book, which would be good and bad.
Yeah, well, it's good for us consumers.
Well, I don't know. Here's a fun question about the book, and when we finally I think there's a little bit of I think there's a question so far as to what the price will be, because printing in color is probably necessary, but it'll be, if they do that, then it'll be more expensive. So
right.
They have to figure out what that's going to be. Look, I would buy the electronic copy.
That's what I ordered. Yeah. Pre-ordered.
Great. Cool. So the electronic copy presumably will be the same.
Well, you can update it for one thing.
Yeah.
Now, as I know it's available, I was on Amazon, it was available on Kindle. Is it going to be available in iBooks too? Apple Books, whatever that thing?
Yeah, they do sell on Apple Books. So
okay.
Yes, that should work.
Because that's what I like to buy it, most of my stuff, if I can.
I would do that as well, just for preference. But yeah, look, it's. I think there's an interesting. If you're writing a textbook and you're writing like the official Apple one, then, because it's by nature of being the official book, then it has to take, it has to explain nearly everything in as neutral a way as possible and be fair to all possible users because it's the official ones. And the user guide has the same restriction. It can't really express a preference and say, well, this is okay, but most people don't use this. But I'm independent, so I can, and so I would recommend. I've talked about all kinds of workflows in this, and obviously if you're collaborating, you should use external media. But I think the vast majority of people who are just learning Final Cut Pro, and therefore the audience for this book, should be using internal media for at least the first few projects.
Sure, I use both. Both. One thing we forgot to mention is LUTs with compressor.
Oh yeah. You can do lots with compressor now. That's fine. And absolutely, it means that if you're pre-processing a heap of stuff which is all log and you want to not edit in log, then you can save a heap of time. And I think there's been some issues, especially with was it HDR footage? If it gets without the LUT in place, is just unwatchable.
Right.
So that's important to get that right. Although, and I think actually there is a limitation if you're doing proxies. You can't do HDRs as H.264. It doesn't work.
Okay.
It will warn you and use ProRes proxy instead.
Exactly. Well, the other thing about the proxy files now is not only we can use H.264, we can use Apple ProRes proxy. We have 4 different resolution sizes, which is nice. There was also something else about that. What was it? I just had it in my head, and I forgot what it was. There was one other thing, but I forgot what it was anyway. So how's motion going?
Motion is good. I mean, there's effectively only the two features, really. There's actually 3, but they only shouted out about 2. And the third one is very subtle, so most people won't mind. So 3D objects using USDZ files. And USDZ at the moment is kind of a minor format, but hey, it's open source, so it'll get more support, and it's free to support it.
Right.
It can support animation as well. There's a lot of 3D formats out there, but there hasn't, I think, been a big kind of open source generally supported. It's a bit like Word documents. They're not open source. They're proprietary, but people just got around them. The same way I think people mostly moved around OBJs. But I'm not deeply into the 3D file formats. I don't know everything about these. But the strength of USDZ is that it's Apple's AR format.
Oh, it is. I didn't know it was Apple's. Okay.
Yeah. Well, it's the format developed between Apple and Pixar. And made open source. So anything that people have been working on for augmented reality can now go into motion. So this is fantastic for sharing assets between an AR project and a video project, if that is something you're doing. And I don't imagine the crossover is going to be huge yet, but I can imagine it being big if Apple do ever release goggles. Suddenly this whole thing will be way more important. And certainly it means that, it makes it much easier for developers to make a video of, the assets that they've been making can now actually just be integrated into a video they're making.
Sure.
Plus, it just means that the format will be more supported and there'll be more stuff going forward. So there's 60 objects built into Motion, part of the content library.
Okay.
And more you can find for yourself online. And I think Ripple have curated a collection at Sketchfab, which is great. So sketchfab.com. Look for their collection. Some are free, some are not, but they've found ones that work because not all of them are good. You can also go to Apple's developer site and look at the augmented reality pages. So Reality Composer and Reality Converter are free apps from Apple. The Reality Composer lets you compose an augmented reality scene, bringing in USDZ files, moving this, setting triggers. So when you walk next to something, this thing happens. Now, you probably wouldn't use all that stuff if you're just going to build something in Motion, but it means you could build a scene outside of Motion and bring it in. But they have some extra models you can download there as well. So there's some there which aren't necessarily available in Motion. Actually, I'm not sure if Apple have some that aren't in Motion. But yeah, I've looked at this for the augmented reality stuff a while ago, so I've got a few extra models I've found somewhere.
Sure. What I was going to say about proxy, the other thing is now if you consolidate your proxies, you take along images, and you take along audio, and you take along video it's not proxy.
Okay.
Before you had to do it separately, had to do it manually. Now it all goes together.
Okay.
Before, the audio wouldn't go because it's not audio proxy. Still images wouldn't go with you when you consolidate it. Now it all goes together. So that's another nice item.
Cool. Okay.
And you can make a proxy-only library. That's fantastic. That's what I was trying to do yesterday.
Okay. So with Motion, so the strength of like the 3D object in Motion is that you can now use them with replicators and particle emitters, all the cool stuff you can do in Motion. It's always been amazing that, all the great behaviors natively, which is really good. So now you can have, so if you have a look at my Mac Pro video demo, I just did a bunch of teapots in a circle, camera moving around them, and then a sequence replicator to just spin a few of the teapots on their own terms, but a few of them at a time. And all that control is super easy with behaviors in Motion. And it's been one of the real shames, and I understand there are really important technical reasons why it hasn't been able to happen before, but MO2, which has the Motion VFX product, which has a lovely render engine, which looks great, hasn't been able to tie into all the same behaviors that Motion had. So they provided their own, which is great, but if you're used to the way that Motion's doing it, you had to relearn it and do it a different way, and you didn't have exactly the same controls. Whereas now, I can just link one thing to something and now move a 3D object based on audio, for example, which is great. And I know you can do some of that in MO2. So really now you've got a choice. Do you want, cheap, fast 3D objects with all the motion trimmings, or do you want, slightly slower, not necessarily, some of the control, but not all of it, but looking amazing with depth of field and camera effects and all that stuff? Well, you've got that in MO2, and you've still got that. And their 3D tracker looks fantastic, coming soon as well. That looks really good.
So Ian,
two 3D engines coming in Motion, which is great.
I have Final Cut FCPX.tv. I have a list of over 20 items on Final Cut Pro 10.4.9. You are on there twice already.
Woohoo! Okay,
for your YouTube video and your Mac Pro video, 10 in Motion 10 in Motion 5.4.6. But you're also going to be on there when your book comes out. You'll be on there 3 times, listed on that list 3 times, 3 separate times. FCPX.tv. I have a list of all. I'm going to keep on. I update this as we go. Of all the Final Cut Pro 10.4 news, articles, tutorials, etc. And Ian, anything else you want to say in closing? I have to get off because we got Hedge for Mac coming up in a half hour. So anything else? Did we miss anything?
No. Well, look, just to say that the book, when we have more details, we'll certainly shout about it. I think we can organize a discount for listeners of the show.
Oh, well, that would be fantastic. Absolutely. We'll bring you back on for just a quick thing, or you can record a video and we'll play it on one of our shows. Sure.
But yeah, no, the 10.9 stuff is integrated into the book. And I think I've called it out to say, look, this was new in 10.4.9 so that people are already used to it. We'll be able to spot the updates as they go through. But, for somebody new, they don't care which release some feature that they're just discovering came in. So, no, it's good. No, look, I'm really happy with the book. I think it's fun to get into a rhythm and, writing.
Oh yeah, once you get started. Once you get started.
Yeah.
And where can people find you?
Chapter is over 13,000 words.
Wow.
With lots and lots of pictures.
People can find you on Twitter. Fun with Stuff.
Fun with Stuff. That's me.
And your book is fun, I'm sure. I'm sure it's a well-written book. I haven't seen anything yet, but
yeah, it's all sitting here. I'm happy with it. I think people will find it easy to learn from. I've certainly tried to design it to be, try to figure out what people want to know and try to make it approachable and lots of step-by-step instructions. Trying to keep it friendly and trying to help people find the best way to do something, not just here's every way to do this. I'm much more like, well, look, this is the way I do this. You can do this if you want, but this is a really good way to approach this, or you might use this feature for this, and here's how to. And I'm trying to get people to build up the primary storyline first, get the spine of the story right. Now, if you need to make any edits, make the edits. Just make it sound good. Now, just cover those edits up, and hey, you're nearly there. And teaching people how to work quickly as well. So
absolutely.
So yeah, look, I hope people like it.
Thank you very much for stopping by this morning. I know you can get to bed. It's late over there in Australia.
It's 5:30 midnight.
But that's not too bad. You're young enough you can stay up past midnight. I don't do that anymore. I used to play till 2 o'clock in the morning, then come home and go to sleep and go to work the next day sometimes. It was terrible. All right, Iain Anderson, Fun with Stuff on Twitter. He's got a new Final Cut Pro book coming out. We'll be looking forward to it, and we'll have him back when it comes out. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Richard.
Bye.
See you.